all yours, Flora.
Thank you. So welcome. Thanks for joining me here today. Before we get started, if everybody could introduce themselves, I think that would be easier. I was going to have us type it in the chat, but since we're a small group, we can just talk through it. And so I'm going to put an example in the chat of what I was hoping everyone could share. So if you could just share your name, the languages you teach, number of years teaching, and then why you decided to join this session. So for me, my name is Laura Fleischer Proano. I teach Spanish. I've been teaching for 8 years. I'm a career changer, so teaching Spanish is kind of a new thing for me. And the reason that I decided to do this session is because I'd like to learn from others how this content might be relevant or how they could adapt it for their own classrooms. So that's me. Somebody else like to introduce themselves, please?
Hey, my name is Silvina Orsadi. I teach Spanish in higher ed. I've been teaching for a long time. I started in Argentina and then I came here. So I'm very interested in this session because I teach a class called Latinos in the United States. And one of the topics, of course, is immigration and refugees. So I am interested in, actually probably changing a little bit that part of the unit based on what I learned from you today. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Matthew?
Hi, my name is Mabella. I'm a Spanish teacher. This is my 6th year.
Thank you. We're not hearing you, Matthew.
Matthew, are you muted? Are you not muted?
We cannot hear you now. Check your mic.
No, it's my internet. 1 second. Let me move to
There you go. Now we're good.
Okay.
All right, let me just get closer to the router. So I'm not sure where I'll just restart. So this is my 6th year teaching. I'm taking over the International Baccalaureate program at my school. So along with that was kind of a piecemeal refugees, human rights lesson that kind of existed already that I'm trying to make a little bit more, connected.
Awesome. And where do you teach, Matthew?
Stafford, Virginia.
Okay.
Virginia.
Yeah, I went to Kutztown, and if you know Nancy Zimmerman, she is
Wonderful.
mother. So I keep coming back.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you and welcome.
My name is Junko Yamamoto, and I'm a method teacher at Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania. And I do teach Spanish education majors and French education majors, and human rights and refugees issues like that keeps coming up in both majors. So I wanted to get other perspectives.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you. All right, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm hopeful, given what you've said, that there's something in this for all of you that you can use. So I have developed a unit that's called Human Rights and Refugees for my college and high school Spanish 4 class at Highlands High School. And the goal of this unit is really to help students develop their data fluency, global competence, and future ready skills. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So my objectives for our session today is first that you'll be able to understand the relationship between these 3 sort of pillars of this unit: data fluency, global competence, and future ready skills. Also, we're going to explore lots of resources. We don't have time to look at all of them, but there's resources that you could definitely use in your work that may be helpful. So I want you to kind of get familiar with them, and then finally just determine how you might use them or adapt them. So take some time to think about what specifically you could do or how you could modify what you're already doing or what you're planning to do using some of these new resources. So I hope that it's like very practical. You walk away with something that you can use. So the first thing I wanted to do, and I think we'll still do the Padlet even though it's a small group, is kind of explore these 3 terms that are in the very long title of my session. But data fluency, global competence, and future ready skills. So if I can find my chat, my computer is like so slow right now. Can you guys see the Padlet? Okay, So I put the link to the Padlet in the chat. If you click on that, you can access the same Padlet that I am in. And what I want you to think about are what words, ideas, phrases come to mind when you hear these three terms. And if you could just type in some of your ideas here. So for example, when I think of data fluency, I'm going to click on the plus sign here. It's going to give me the option to put a subject and then write something beautiful. I'm just going to write a subject because I'm just doing phrases. So I'm going to say big data is what I come to mind, and then I'm going to publish it. When I think about global competence, the thing that comes to my mind most is empathy. So I'm just going to type that there. And then future ready skills, I kind of think about critical thinking. So if you could, I mean, you don't have to type in each of the three columns, but if you could just come up with some ideas, words, phrases that come to mind when you think of data fluency, global competence, and future ready skills. And again, you just click that plus sign and then you can post something there. If you love something that somebody posts, you can give it some love by clicking on the hearts.
I was able to see everything you posted, but the plus sign actually doesn't show up for me.
Oh, okay, so you might need to, does it show up for anyone else? Okay, so how about you guys just share and I'll write them here. Anybody want to share? What do you think about words, phrases for data fluency, global competence, and future ready skills?
Okay. I would say the ability for global competence, I would say the ability to share other people's perspective. Well, look at things from other people's perspective.
Great.
So for global competence, I will add multiculturalism, like intercultural competence. Either way, multiculturalism, intercultural competence. Yes.
Great. Other ideas?
I'd say for data fluency, the ability to inquire, go deeper into why data says what it says.
Great.
I guess for critical thinking, I will add collaboration with others.
Yeah, these are great. Any others? Any other thoughts?
With data fluency, I would say the ability to detect others' bias and our own biases.
Yeah, that's great. That's really important. Okay, so for data fluency, we have inquire, the ability to inquire, explore what and why data says what it says, detecting biases in that data, not only others, but also our own. Global competence, the ability to share other people's perspectives, look at them from their perspective, multicultural lessons, intercultural competence, and then future ready skills, critical thinking, and collaboration. Yeah, that's a great start. So that's, you guys are right where we need to be. I'm going to go back here and let's just make that go up. Okay. Oh, I did want to note that if you want to access this slideshow, you can click on the tinyurl.com/PSMLA human rights. I've linked a ton of things in here, so this is something you can go back to. If you want to explore something further, you can do that later on. So for data fluency, yeah, I mean, this is basically taking big data and, having that inquiry-based mindset, really trying to understand what the data is telling us and using it to inform our decisions, right? So not just saying, I'm going to do this because it's what I heard, but really using data to inform our actions and our decisions. And so the resource that I'm going to talk about today is a Carnegie Mellon University Create Lab technology that is absolutely fantastic for this. And given what you've said about what you're doing in your work, this is something that I think you might find really useful. We're going to talk about the end project that my students do for this unit is to develop a EarthTime story. So this technology is called EarthTime. I'll just go to the website real quick so you can see it. But EarthTime is a series of interactive maps that pull from huge data sets like NASA or the UN, and they use that data to tell stories. Journalists use it. The World Economic Forum has been using it, and my students are using it to understand what's happening with refugee situations. So we're going to explore a little bit more what EarthTime is. They have pre-made stories like about the pandemic or the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2019. They have stories that they created about global gender gaps, ocean mining, etc. So there's tons of stuff in here, but it's really about using big data to tell a story, inform decision making, and understand really what's going on at a deeper level. So data fluency is the first big area, big pillar of this unit. The second is global competence. And this is sort of the framework that we used for developing this unit. And you may be familiar with this graphic. It's from the Asia Society. So the first step is students are investigating the world. In this case, they're investigating refugee situations around the world. They're recognizing perspectives. So getting to the point that was made about understanding biases. So you understand, what do I think about this? What do others think about this? And then communicating ideas. So communicating ideas, this is where they develop an EarthTime story about a refugee situation that they researched. So they're communicating what they learned from their research, from using this big data to understand what's going on. And then finally, the last and most important step is to take action. So we want them to take an action that's going to improve conditions. And what we have them do at the end of this unit is we create an action wall, and we say, as a result of everything that you've learned in this unit, how are you going to act differently? And we have them verbalize it, we have them write it down, and we share it. So the goal is, and some of my students have done the things, and they've shared with me the things that they've done. So it's really exciting. And then the third pillar, so data fluency, global competence, and the third pillar is the future ready skills. So the World Economic Forum, if you click on that link here where it says future ready skills, it will take you to the article about the World Economic Forum's top 10 skills of 2025, but they're listed here. And they're things that we mentioned, the critical thinking. Because of this technology that they're using, these interactive maps, this big data, we get into some of this technology use and design, problem solving, trying to make sense of these situations. So all of these three, the data fluency, the global competence, and future ready skills, are all very much interconnected, and they form sort of the pillars for this unit. So I want to give a shout out to the people that helped create this unit. Nice slides, there we go. Oops, went one too far. I'm having a delay here. So I developed this unit with the social studies teacher at my school, Michelle Dickerson, and we worked closely with the Create Lab at Carnegie Mellon University, which is the lab that created EarthTime, the technology. And this is through a partnership with ABC Create. So most of you are not in the Pittsburgh area, but ABC Create is a STEAM consortium. So I'm one of the few Spanish teachers involved in this, but it's a STEAM consortium that promotes STEAM integration in K through 12 classrooms. And so we work closely with the Create Lab to do that. So just want to give a shout out to them. So the unit itself, if you click on this link here, it's going to take you to a PDF with everything that we use for this unit. Before I do that, I want to share the essential questions. They're listed here. So we explore various refugee situations around the world, and the essential questions that we're trying to make sense of are, what are the situations that create refugees? What are the human rights violations that they're facing? And how do they change personally? And how does the home and host communities change as well? And we talk about solutions. So what are some global, local solutions to support refugee populations? And then finally, again, getting back to that action step from the global competence framework, what is your responsibility in relationship to refugees as a global citizen? So you say, oh, well, that's happening way over there. That doesn't impact me. So we want them to start kind of personalizing it and thinking about, okay, well, now that I know this, what's my responsibility? So those are the questions that we explore throughout the unit. And here on the right side of the screen is the rubric that we use for that EarthTime story at the end. And these are the questions that they need to answer in the story that they create. So after doing lots of research, then they create the story and hopefully address these questions. I'm going to go ahead and click on the link so you can see the PDF that has many links inside of it as well. But this is what was created with through ABC Create in collaboration with the Carnegie Mellon Create Lab. And it's a PDF that has all of the activities in this unit, all of the resources that you would need. And it's designed that you can use a part of it, all of it, some of it, change it, do whatever you would need to do with it. So the first page just kind of gives you an overview. I'm not going to go in great detail here. There are examples of EarthTime stories. So that's the end project that the students create. The second page here gives you an overview. So this unit is, like 6 weeks long. So maybe you don't have 6 weeks. So say if you wanted to just do something on human rights, we do a 5-day introduction to human rights. We then focus on Syria for 5 days. And the goal is to do this in parallel. The social studies teacher is doing this while I'm doing this in the Spanish classroom. So at the end, we can come together and sort of share our learnings, have our students share their learnings. So that's the second week. In the third week in the Spanish classroom, we focus on the situation in Venezuela, and in the social studies classroom, they focus on the Sahel. And then the final part is to create those EarthTime stories. So the students use their learning to communicate what they've learned through the story. And we haven't been able to do this because of COVID yet, but the last part is for students to, the social studies students to share with the Spanish students, and the Spanish students to share with the social studies students about their learnings. So if you continue through it, you'll see each activity, how long it takes, whether it's an offline, online activity, all of the links to the resources, English and Spanish versions if they're available, and it continues. So this is a resource that you're welcome to explore later. I just wanted to let you know it's there. I'm going to pull out some highlights from there because I can't go through the whole thing in just the time that we have. Before I continue, any questions?
It seems to me that's a lot of time to spend with this topic, and so in my case, I probably only have like 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. So how deep do you really go? I would like to probably get that question answered. How deep do you really go? You go into videos, I guess, etc. I don't know. I would like to wrap my head around this, because it looks like you're spending a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's amazing. Right.
Yeah. So I think it just, it depends what you have the time to do. I typically in a year, I only do 4 or 5 units, and we really try to dig deep into it. So that works for me. But like I said, if you wanted to focus on human rights, then you could just do that. It's hard because, my students are at level, it's 4 years of Spanish, it's their 4th year, but this topic is really hard in English. So it takes more time to process. It's very sensitive. So and sometimes we don't get as deep as I would like to, or when we start to get deeper, then we switch into English, which isn't my goal, but I really think it's an important topic. And, I say I'm a Spanish teacher, but I really believe in developing global competence. And I think it is so important. So like we watch a film called Salam. It's a documentary called Salam Neighbor, and it's about 2 Americans who went to live in a refugee camp in Syria. And it's just so powerful. It's in English and Arabic, but I'm like, you know what? I know this isn't Spanish, but I want you to feel what this is like.
Okay.
I do make some compromises there, but those things that if you're like, listen, I want to focus on the Spanish, I'm not going to do that, then you wouldn't do it, but that takes like 3 days because we're talking about, okay, what's happening, but it's a really powerful film. So
that's where the question was going, mainly because of the language aspect and the vocabulary, and like I said, if you're going to watch even a 5-minute video, you need so much teach them ahead and in terms of the vocab and discussion and pre-discussion and all those things. That's why I was wondering about how deep you go or how many resources you go. So, but yeah, I would like to, whatever you want to say and share today, will be very helpful to me so I can, put things in.
So what I'm going to do, I have a Jamboard so we can share some ideas, but we can also just talk about it again since we're a smaller group. But I want to talk about 3 sections of this unit. So the first one is exploring human rights. The second one is interpreting challenging texts, so researching refugee situations in Syria and Venezuela. So again, this might be easier to focus on Venezuela. Like if you don't have a lot of time, then you just focus on Venezuela. You'll have more sources in Spanish. That could work. And then the third part is creating the refugee stories. EarthTime is only in English, but this is the data fluency part of it. So they have the research in Spanish, and now they're trying to use the data to help understand the story in more depth. So the first resource, and I think this is absolutely incredible if you have not seen this yet, if you're doing anything with human rights. Has anybody heard of Youth for Human Rights? Maybe. Okay, so they offer their materials in 17 different languages. So the website is a wealth of resources on its own. But if I click here, you have Chinese, Danish, German, English, Greek, Spanish, Castilian Spanish, French, Hebrew. I mean, it's a nice list. You can actually order a packet from them. It's for educators, and they will give you a little pamphlet of the 30 human rights. They will give you posters for each of the 30 human rights. So I have those in Spanish. They gave me, I think there's 20 in each set. And then they have a bunch of lessons. Like you don't even have to create your own. You could use something of theirs. I haven't, but they have that. But in order to introduce the human rights, I usually do a brainstorm and say, what are human rights? Which is basically what they do in this video. I'm not going to play it, but I encourage you to check it out if it's of interest to you.
So what I have been looking into, and like I said, I am designing a new class around the Sustainable Development Goals. So I went to the Sustainable Development. So one of the goals, right, really focuses on human rights. And so that's the part that I have been doing and exploring those resources, but I've never gone to Youth for Human Rights. Do you think it would be appropriate for college students, these two, or is just for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
And the resources, I'm just going to warn you, if you order them, they're free. They're free for educators. But it takes, I don't know where they're coming from, but it takes like 3 months. So it takes a while for them to come in.
Order today.
Yeah, order it right away. And you get this little, 20 of these pamphlets. The posters, I had the posters laminated because I use them as sticker. But I have them, and you can watch this video in Spanish. It's very fast in Spanish, I'll just warn you. My students are like, wait, what? But I asked them, what are human rights? They brainstorm it, and then we watch this video together in Spanish and kind of compare the ideas. So it's a great video, about 10 minutes here. And then what we do from there is I give them the pamphlets and we focus on the first 10 human rights. And then on the website, they have public service announcements for each of the human rights. So it's like a 1-minute video. So if they read the text in the pamphlet and they're like, wait, what is that about? But then they actually, okay, we're all born free and equal, and they watch the video. Again, I'm not going to play it, but you can watch these videos and see, what is it? What are they talking about in this one? So it kind of helps them piece together the video, the audio, and then the text. So you have 2 texts to kind of make sense of what the right is. So after they've, read and watched the video, we have them think of historical examples of, like one of them is like, you have the right to assemble, essentially. So we say, oh yeah, like those are the Black Lives Matters protests that we saw recently, like we have that right to do that. So we talk about historical violations or examples of when that right has been exercised. And again, this can take some time, but we usually do like 1 through 10 in one class. And then at the end we say, okay, of these 10 human rights, which ones are most important to you? And the goal is not for them to memorize all 30 human rights. The goal is for them to be familiar with what they are and think about the ones that are important to them. We do this over 3 days. So the first day is 1 through 10, the second day is 11 through 20, and the third day is 21 through 30. So they look at the human rights, their classmates share what, what they saw. Each person is just assigned 1 or 2 human rights to look at. And then we do, a share with the class. So it's a good way to just kind of introduce them to what the human rights are. But, again, not having them like memorize what each of them, and some of them, they feel passionate about one or another based on personal experience. And that's what we want them to do in terms of that, what's the most important human right to you and why. So that is the first part on human rights. Any questions before I move from here? Or maybe we should just talk. Is there something in here that you think that you could adapt or use in your classroom?
I was thinking this will be a good for ELL as well,
Mhm.
because ELL, if you grew up in a different country, we tend to have different idea of human rights and different experiences. So going back to what global competency is all about, we could watch the same video, and then we would be able to have different opinions. So I think any of those resources can be useful to practice that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point for ELL as well. Mhm.
So for me, 2 of the themes that we cover are just generally categorized as experiences and social organization. I feel like this really goes into the experience of what is it to be a human, let alone like just and the language aspect of it, but what does it mean to you as a human? What rights do you deserve
Mhm.
just for being you?
Mhm.
That's a really good point, Matthew.
Yeah, it is. And I think sometimes some of the human rights are so obvious. You're like, oh, well, yeah, of course. And others, people are like, oh, why do we even have to say that? So I think it's a great point. Mhm. Okay, so if you wanted to just focus on human rights, that's an option. So, getting to the point of like the challenge, this is a challenging topic, and some of the texts are challenging. So the way that I introduce it is there's an and because the end goal is to create an EarthTime refugee story, I start off with an EarthTime refugee story that is in Spanish about Syria. And we do the interpretive task of an integrated performance assessment. Are you guys familiar with integrated performance assessments? Yeah, so I highly recommend, I have this book, I highly recommend it. I put the link in there in case you don't have it. It's just, a great resource. And so I was going to show you how we do that one. So actually, maybe I'll show you the story first. So the EarthTime story, I've been talking about them and I haven't shown you one yet. So we'll look at this one just as an example of what it can look like. So essentially it's slides that explain the interactive maps that are appearing on the screen. And so EarthTime has the ability to, pull data about environmental data, demographics, etc. This one is, focusing on the refugee situation in Syria. So here at the bottom is the story, and this is what the students also create. So this is the Crisis de Refugiados. So you have just like a couple summary slides, and then they go into some specifics. So if you look at the map, you'll see this layer of data is showing an animation over time of the movement from refugees, and you'll see the timeline down here is year 2000 to 2016. Each of these dots represents 17 refugees. And so a refugee is defined as a person leaving a country by cause of conflict or persecution. And so you can kind of just see globally what's happening. The second one is just describing that the points are flowing from the center of the one country to the center of the other. So that doesn't represent the city they're going to, it's center of country to center of country, so you can understand. And the color of the dot changes from yellow to red. So is the country you're leaving from, it's yellow, and then when you arrive, it would be red. So then getting more specifically into Syria, we're seeing from 2010 to 2012, and this is where the data fluency comes in. So in this case, these circles represent urban fragility. And so you see there's an urban fragility score. And so what you see happening and what's showing and written here in the text is that, protests are starting in Syria. You have an increase in deaths and displacement. And when that urban fragility just gets like so big, it gets to the point of like, then the refugee flow happens. So there is a relation, you can see the relationship between urban fragility and refugee flows. And so what's really interesting is the students are going through this, well, what's urban fragility? So then they start to look up, okay, urban fragility, what does that mean? What are the things that go into it? So it's a great way for them to, again, going back to what Matthew said at the beginning in terms of data fluency, it's that inquiry. We want them to be inquiring, trying to understand more to make sense of it. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but there are more slides that are in the same vein. And as I said before, within EarthTime, you can explore lots of different data. So if you weren't doing refugees, maybe you're doing something about borders or biodiversity, climate, conflict. So there's tons of economics, there's tons of stuff in here that again, they're pulling from huge data sets, and you can do this on any topic if it's of something of interest. So then what we did is, like I said, an integrated performance assessment. And where is that? It's over here. So if you guys are familiar with these, I won't take a lot of time here, but kind of break it down. There's the link that has the different parts, the keyword recognition of key phrases that they need to understand in order to understand those essential questions. Causas, causes, human rights violations, solutions, impacts on personally and on the home country, on the host country, and their personal responsibility. So the focus of this is to pull those keywords out. You have the main idea, supporting details, organizational features, guessing meaning from context, inferences, author's perspective, and my favorite, comparing cultural perspectives. So it's always a very interesting discussion. And then the rubric that goes with it, everything I pulled, just adapted from the IPA manual itself. So that's one of the sources that we look at. The other one is we use lots of UN data. So for the Venezuela situation, we use, this is in Spanish. I did an English link just in case folks needed oh no, I did the Spanish link. Okay, so these are the briefs by the United Nations Refugee Council. So, we read this and we have an interactive reading model. Are you familiar with interactive reading models? So this is from the teacher's handbook. I have an older version of it. It's in chapter 6, but there's a 5th edition, I think came out in 2015. But I use them a lot in class. I think it's a great way, again, to break down complicated texts. So this is the text, which you can see, it's an authentic text, and it can be complicated. It's a complicated topic. But we have that. So, okay, thanks. We have a, whoops, that's not where I want to go. Where am I trying to go? Ah. Here, this is where I want to go. So the interactive reading model, these are all the resources, but I'm just going to pop to the interactive reading model here. There's the preparation phase. So before reading that text, what do they know about Venezuela? What are some expressions that they think they might find in this brief? The comprehension phase, so they go ahead and read it. What's the main idea? What are the important details? And again, focusing on those essential questions. Vocabulary work, which, this is always something that they are able to do well, and they feel like, okay, I can make sense of some of this, even though it's very complicated. Interpretive discussion phase, they guess vocabulary and context. They interpret the issue on a deeper level. And then my favorite is the creativity phase. So they take what they've learned. We do a little role play where they pretend like they're CNN in Espanol, CNN in Espanol, CNN in Spanish, reporter, and then the other person is, a United Nations Refugee Council expert. And they have to, interview each other, or the CNN reporter has to interview the expert. And then they switch roles. And this is really interesting. I mean, this has gone super well. And then afterwards, they have to leave a voicemail and they tell their best friend how that interview went. I used, you can use Flipgrid, but I've also used Google Voice in the past. And then the final thing is to create a brief on the situation. And this is just, I put this outside, I hang them up in the hall, like college and high school Spanish 4 wrote a feature news article about the Venezuelan refugee situation. And so students in the hall are like, wait, what? There's a refugee situation in Venezuela, what's happening? So this is the interactive reading model. And I love this as kind of, it's already, the structure is there, and you can change the questions and the content here based on the, what's appropriate for the text that you're working with. So any questions about that before I move on? Or comments? Or how do you think you would adapt this? Could you use this? Are you using IPAs and IRNs, and is this something that would be useful?
You're giving me a lot to think about, so I need to start digest. Of course, the IPAs are part of our teaching. It's just, again, the amount of information and how deep you want to go. And as you know, in college, we don't have a lot of time. We have one semester and we don't even meet every day. So I have to just be very selective. So like I said, you're giving me, I'm taking a lot of notes. It will be a lot to think about for next semester, or probably in a couple semesters. I cannot implement this right away, but I'm not teaching this class right now anyways, but yeah. But this is very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the UN briefs are really, I think they're challenging texts, but I think they're really good in terms of because they have quotes from people, so it kind of humanizes it, but it's also, and we talk about bias too, going back to what we said at the beginning. We say the United Nations wants you to donate. So what they're sharing with you is information that's trying to persuade you to donate. So I think they're great sources, but we do talk about that bias as well.
I do have a game. I've been mostly into games in my research. So I do have a game that it's very good for refugees. It's a third world farmer. If you're ever interested, I'm going to type it in the chat, because it deals with the poverty and refugees. And so anyways, I'll type it if anyone is interested. But it might tie with what you're doing, and you will have more time than me to use.
Other comments, ideas?
I think the reading that you gave is right on par with the level that my students will need to be at. So I think very little would have to be done with that. My thing would be trying to just play more around with the actual assessment itself to align it more towards what IB wants, because they're so picky. But I really like everything that you've shown so far.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the third part I wanted to share is actually creating the human rights and refugee stories. So, I know everybody has a different approach to how they teach, but I want them to be able to communicate. So, I'm going to share some of their stories, which are not going to be perfect Spanish. So just putting that out. That's my disclaimer. So the third part is they've learned about Syria, they've learned about Venezuela, and then they choose a refugee situation that they want to research, that they're interested in. And so, that's sort of where they get some personal choice, and they do some exploration on their own. There's some activities that guide them through that process, because it's not easy. But here are just some examples. So I'll share the example of Myanmar from one of my students that he created last year. And so very much like the Syria one, it is, a series of slides, and it's supposed to focus on those essential questions. So causas, efectos, derechos humanos, soluciones. And some of it, because you don't have a ton of space here, it's kind of boiling it down to the most critical information. So he found some really interesting, so state-based violence. So you see, over time, again, the timeline's at the bottom, you see violence increasing. he also found, other data about violence in terms of effectos. This is where we see the refugee flows. And I think here, yep. So he talks about some of the impacts and how many refugees were leaving. Derechos humanos, he found this. This is about human trafficking. So I think this is actually really fast. It needs to slow down. You can slow down but you can see there's a blue dot that slowly gets bigger. And right there. And then the last one, soluciones. So he found this freedom score that shows how free a country is. And so you can kind of see over time how that is changing. So again,
can you share the screen again?
I'm sorry.
Can you share the screen again?
Oh, am I not sharing? Oh, I am so sorry. I thought I was sharing all that time. I'm so sorry. You guys are probably like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
It was just, yeah, it was just the last part.
Oh, just the last part. Okay, sorry, it must have just popped off. Yeah. So, these are some of, he used the Freedom House score. This is human trafficking on this slide, and global refugees is showing the effects, and then the causes. He was looking at violence. So you can click on those links. I know we're almost wrapping up here, but if you go into that slideshow from the tiny URL, there's those 4 examples from Somalia, Burundi, and Colombia as well. But EarthTime is just a really cool tool. And I mean, we're using it in the most advanced way, and that my students are actually creating stories. You can just use it as a way to teach about refugee flows, because those, like watching the refugee flows, and one thing that our students oftentimes say, like, oh, I thought in the US we took in lots of refugees. And I'm like, yeah, who's taking in most of the refugees? What, so it's a very interesting conversation. So, and this is just some of the outcomes. This is part of the action wall here. The students talk about, things that they want to do as a result of their learning. I've had students who found an organization called Letters of Love, where and you might want to check it out. It's a youth-led organization, and you can write letters of love to refugee children around the world. So some of my students do that for volunteer work. I have a friend who works for a refugee organization in California, and she spoke to the class about her work and how they welcome refugees in the Sacramento area of California. So that is it. I know we're out of time. If you have any last questions, comments, I'm happy to do it now, or you can email me. My email is lproano@goldenrams.com.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for the wonderful session. We were very fortunate to have Laura present with us. Please do a session evaluation and Act 48 form. And disclaimer, I did do a session evaluation form like a minute ago, and then I said, this has to be the best of PA. So you may you may get some noted contacts or whatever. But without that, I think that we're going to have the next session starting up. So thank you so much for attending, and
Thank you very much.
have fun for the next session. Matthew, did you get the link?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right, in that case, I'm going to close everyone. Take care.
Adios.
Adios. Suzanne, are you the next presenter?
Hi, Junko. I am
Hi.
take over from you.
Okay, I'm going to make you a main host, and I'm going to leave here. Make you the
Okay.
hosts. Change the hosts. And then I am going to, is Barbara the co-host?
Barb is the one of the presenters.
Okay, should I let her in, and I'm going to leave?
Yeah, please do let her in.
Okay.
But she is in already, I think.
She's on, so you are the host, so you should be able to make her a co-host.
Okay.
I lost the privilege, so I'm going to go ahead and leave. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Barb.
Hi, Suzanne.
Yes.
I feel like we met before.
Yeah, I think so too. And there is Wilma. I'm going to let Wilma in. I think, you don't teach German though, do you?
No,
No.
I teach
Speak
Spanish.
Finnish. Yes, yes. Okay.
But
so
Wilma and I
Wilma-
are colleagues. We teach together.
Yes. Well, and is your third colleague also coming?
I'm not sure if she'll be here or not.
Okay. She, Natalie Stearns. is
Right.
In the program as well.
Right.
Hi,
Yeah.
Wilma.
Hi,
Hey.
Wilma.
Hey. Hey, I just got out of my other session. I'm gonna take a quick pause and use
No
the
problem.
restroom. You need anything from me before I go
Nope.
do that?
All is
Okay.
good.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need to make you co-host. Barb, make co-host. Should I make Wilma co-host as well?
You certainly can.
Okay.
She's gonna back me
Oh.
up if I mess
Yeah.
anything up.
Mhm. I'm going to actually stop the recording here.
Right.
Stop.